Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Ron. I'm an alcoholic. Let's find our seats. A couple quick announcements. And the beautiful thing about this meeting is now we do put our talks on YouTube and it's shared around the world. But an important thing to realize is that there's nothing like being here in person. It's really amazing always to see you guys each week. It's an important part of the program. With that said, we got a couple announcements coming on. In March, this church does Code Blue. So what that means is that during our Saturday night meeting, if it does go to a Code Blue, they're going to use our meeting room here for the homeless, which is a good cause. So we will use a different room in the building. So just be mindful of that. If you come in through the front door, sometimes we use the side meeting, whatever one it looks like, you'll follow the sign, you'll figure it out. But be mindful of that. And it's a good, this church does a lot of great work for a lot of different organizations and people that need help. It mirrors what we do in AA about helping others, and that's the whole premise of this group, is to be of service to the newcomer. Anyway, with that, what else do I got to tell you guys? Oh yeah, we do have a recurring meeting every commitment at a treatment center. It's in Quakertown. It's at 7 p.m. on Sundays. It's every Sunday. We need 2-3 people to want to go up there. If you'd like to come up, there's no requirements. Just come up and willing to share a message of hope and recovery to the sick and suffering. They're very desperate. They very much appreciate people that come out and take time out of their day on a Sunday night to carry a message to them. And another thing that we do is we supply them with free big books. And I always say, like in the last year, we've given away over 200 big books for free. We just ordered another shipment of 500. So we're constantly carrying this message of recovery everywhere, which is the program. The meeting part is an amazing part of it, but it's about what we do when we leave here. Anyway, with that said, I've said enough, and I think we got, is it the world's best chairperson or second best? Let's welcome Nikolai.
Welcome to the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is Nick and I am an alcoholic. Amen. This is a 1-hour speaker meeting that meets every Saturday evening at St. Paul's Lutheran Church, 301 North Main Street in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. Food and fellowship starts at 8 p.m. and the speaker is to follow at 8:30. The business meeting for this group meets every Saturday at 7 p.m. to 7:30 right here. Please come early and join us. The purpose of this group is to provide a consistent message of hope and recovery through God reliance and service to others through the practice and teaching of the 12 steps. We record all speakers so that others may benefit from their message of recovery. If you wish not to be recorded, simply ask. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. The group would like to welcome everyone, especially newcomers. Is there anyone new or from out of town that would like to introduce themselves with their first name? Yes, sir.
My name is Rob, alcoholic.
Hey, Rob. The Conscious Contact Speaker Group encourages sponsorship. Would anyone with working knowledge of the 12 steps and is willing to sponsor, please raise your hands. Are there any announcements for the good of AA? Our sister group is a big book study meeting that meets every Thursday at 7:30 just up the street at Salem UCC Church, 186 East Court Street, Doylestown, Pennsylvania. Coffee is on at 6:15. We have meeting lists and big books on easy terms. Please see me or any home group member after the meeting. If you cannot afford a big book, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group will give you one at no charge. Anyone willing to make donations for the purchase of big books and CDs to help those who can't afford them can put donations in a jar on the table marked Big Book and CD Donations. All CDs are available free of charge. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Doylestown, and our Facebook group. Subscribe and share. You can find our speakers there, join our Facebook page, and keep informed and share upcoming events and meetings. And now with that, I have a friend to come up and read the Just for Today prayer.
Good evening, everybody. Jeff, alcoholic. Just for today, prayer of recovery. Just for today, I will be agreeable. I will look as well as I can, dress becomingly, talk low, act courteously, criticize not one bit, not find fault with anything, and not try to improve or regulate anybody except myself. Thank you. And I'd like to introduce Jack, who is going to read something for us. I'm not sure what.
My name is Jack. I'm an alcoholic. This is the AA preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We're self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics achieve sobriety. And I have Olivia coming up and reading the 12 steps.
Okay, Olivia, alcoholic. The 12, oh, is it here?
They're there.
Oh, thank you. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs.
The 7th tradition. Every AA group ought to be fully self-supported and declining outside contributions. At this time, we'd like to pass the baskets. We have no dues or fees, but we do have expenses, and this group provides many services. Your donations cover food, rent, big books, CDs, events, and workshops. There is absolutely no smoking on church property. Please take a moment to silence all cell phones and try to limit movement during the meeting to avoid distractions. Now, to introduce the speaker, a good friend of the Conscious Contact Speaker Group. Tonight we have Mikey H. from New Jersey from the Age of Miracles group.
Good evening. My name's Mike. I'm a recovered alcoholic. Sound okay? Any thumbs down? Great. Let me just, very first thing, get it right up front. Probably the smartest thing I ever said in my entire life was, I don't know. And I want to share that tonight, that I don't know. But I do know that something's working in my life. So as I said, my name is Mike, and I'm a recovered alcoholic. My real name is Mike Deanna, but around AA I seem to have earned the nickname Mikey Hats. And so that's just what I rock with. It's memorable, it's cool, it feeds that old need to be special, to be somebody, I guess. My home group is the Age of Miracles group in Westfield, New Jersey. If you ever find yourself in Union County in that area, please join us. We have 3 meetings. They're all big book, all different formats. On Thursday we do a big book workshop. We bring in a recovered alcoholic to read a predetermined portion of the book, and they get anywhere from 2 to 5 weeks to do that. And in the beginning it's broken down by chapter, and then once we get to page 58 we break it down a little differently. Friday night we have a pretty standard big book study. We pretty much read a paragraph or 2 and share. We just have a discussion. You can share multiple times, and we generally don't get more than 2 paragraphs. We really juice the book. That's Fridays at 10 p.m., Thursdays 7:30. And then Sundays at 4 p.m. we have a Big Book Beginners meeting, and we bring in 3 recovered alcoholics who each get 10 minutes to spend on any 1 or 2 paragraphs they choose out of the book. And we're a fairly new meeting. We started about 2.5 years ago, and if you do the math on that, that's interesting timing. But that's when my group started, and we're just trying to carry this message, not trying to know, right? Trying to be open. So I also have a sponsor. Her name is Rayanne C., and her home group is the Clark Big Books meeting. And her sponsor is a guy named Tracy, and he's out of the Atlantic group, and I am a sponsor. And one of the guys I sponsor will be here next week, and my sponsor will be here the week after that, which is kind of cool. Let me also say that you've had many better speakers than me, and I'm sure you'll have many better after. Like I said, I'm just here to share my experience. And I think that's the housekeeping stuff I wanted to get out of the way. I'm probably missing something. At some point tonight, my ego may get out. One of those little places where fear has found a home in me may get out. And I ask you in advance to forgive that. Know that I'm a work in progress. And also, I just want to apologize humbly. I did not know about smoking, and I sat and smoked in my truck. The cigarette butt is in my pocket. I don't leave them on the ground. So for what that's worth, next time I know, and I will let my people coming know. So my sober date's October 1st, 2008. That's incredible. I sat around AA for 2 years. I couldn't get 10 days. I lied, right? I'd come here and say I had 23 days, and somebody tapped me on the shoulder. 21 days was what it was, and the guy tapped me on the shoulder and said I had 23 the day before, right? And I tried other ways. I tried to continue to use other things and figure this out, but the truth is I didn't want any part of this word God. I didn't see how black words on white paper and this weird sponsorship thing was going to fix me. Let me share an addition, and again I'll preface it with, I don't know, right? If you have a different experience than me and that's working, by all means you're right. If your sponsor disagrees with me and they're sleeping well at night and living good, by all means they're right, right? But I do like to challenge stuff. It never occurred to me early on, it just never occurred to me that I could push back on and question the thoughts in my mind. Never occurred to me. I believed everything in my head, right? So have your own experience. And, like I said, I'm open to being wrong about anything I say, but I like attention, and sometimes that's negative, and I like to challenge slogans, and I like to ask questions. And with that, though, I stay open, right? If you come and share something with me, there's an old Buddhist saying, and it's sort of along the lines of show up at your neighbor's house with your cup empty, right? Because if I show up with my cup full, they can't give me anything, right? So if you want to come and share something with me, I promise to do my best to try and show up with my cup empty. Because as I said, we'll dig a little more into that I don't know. What I've come to discover is that what I know for certain, what I know to be absolutely true is a trap. There's no freedom in that. And what I don't know is complete freedom, right? It turns out that as I sit and I bash these steps and I bash this book and I bash this word God, because I'm absolutely certain that none of that is worth anything, and it turns out I'm completely wrong, right? You ever have that your girlfriend or your boyfriend or your husband or your wife or whatever, you can't get a hold of them and you're like, I know what they're doing. I'm absolutely certain. And then you find out what actually happened and you're like, yeah, I guess it could have been that too, right? So I try not to be trapped in that. There's a little paragraph on page 58. Let me also say that I'm not arrogant enough to be up here to try and teach or preach to you. And if I come off that way, I apologize. That's fully ego and fear. But I read this book a certain way, and I've had a certain experience with that. But this little paragraph that I read on page 58, I like to share because it's what I hope to do tonight. And you've probably read it or heard it 100 times, and maybe I can give you a little bit different take on it, or maybe not. But it says that our stories disclose in a general way, right? And what I'd like to do with you tonight is disclose in a general way, which means minus details, right? In a general way, what we used to be like. And that's important wording for me, because we is a plural version of I, right? And I often hear around AA what it was like instead of what I used to be like, right? And there's a big difference for me, because I spent my whole life focused on what it was like, right? It is everything external. I is me. So I hope to share with you in a general way what I used to be like: selfish, self-centered, dishonest, and afraid, right? And what alcoholism looks like in my life. And then it says, what happened? And I find that a lot of times around AA, it seems like I hear the what happened to be the bottom, the end, right? And my experience is the what happened is this, right? It's the bridge to what we are like now. And again, we is I, not it, right? What I'm like now, not what my externals are like, not about my truck and my wife and my kids, what I'm like. What's my internal condition? What's peace look like? What's waking up in the morning feel like, right? What's prayer and meditation look like at night, right? Am I full of guilt, shame, remorse, fear, anxiety? Or am I mostly at peace, right? And then it goes on to say, if you've decided you want what we have, and I don't think I'm missing anything there. And again, I hear a lot of times around Alcoholics Anonymous, identify, don't compare. And I just want to propose this idea to you that perhaps that question, right? If you've decided you want what we have, perhaps they're asking you to compare. Right? How do you find out you want what I have? Well, you look at what I have compared to what you have. And I think when we twist that beginning part in a general way, and we sit here and tell detailed stories, what I think happens is that's my nature, is to compare that, right? But compare your internal condition to my internal condition. And if it looks good and you decide you want what I have, then you might be ready to take certain steps, right? And I spent a lot of time in AA assuming if you walked in the door that you were ready to take certain steps, that you needed to take certain steps, right? I was that guy barking at you, and you got to get a sponsor. I remember I was at a meeting one night, and I was at the podium, and I literally shook my finger and said, if you're not doing the steps and you don't have a sponsor, you're not sober. Now let me just share with you, I may not disagree with that, right? But what do I know? What do I know about you? What do I know about what God can do, right? God doesn't need this book. I do, right? I need this book. I don't know what God can do. What can God do with the guy on an island who's never seen a white man or a book, right? But he knows how to make some wine and he's an alcoholic. Can God get him sober? I don't know, right? But I happen to have access to this thing, and it's really simple. It's a really simple program, and we'll talk more about this as we go. But the simplicity of it is, in my life today, it's funny, I sit in a lot of times when I'm in a meeting, and it'll be like a 12 and 12 meeting or whatever, and we'll come up to that part of the book that says we can go anywhere free men go, provided we're in fit spiritual condition, right? And I'll listen to everybody's checklist. What does fit spiritual condition look like, right? I got this, I got that. And for me, it's one thing. It's only one thing. Does my sponsor know all? That's it. That's how I know if I'm in fit spiritual condition or not. My sponsor knows everything that's going on with me right now, or she doesn't. And we'll talk more about that, because you'll also hear me say that this whole thing is about love, right? And I really look forward to talking to you about that, because love is not a feeling, it's a space I create, and we'll talk about it more when we get there. But my alcoholism, and again, this is just my take on it and how I read this book, but it appears to me that alcoholism is one thing, right? That there's one black or white, is or isn't peace. And let me say with that, almost nothing in this world is black and white, right? At least in my life. Most everything is scales of gray or scales of color, but it's scales. But I do feel like the book says things like this is what sets us apart as a distinct entity, right? It does talk about a cure, that I would be able to recover control. I do have 3 things, but the one that sets me apart from the rest of the planet is this physical component, this allergy, right? And that confused me. because I'm allergic to penicillin, right? And when I take penicillin into my body says no, right? I can't breathe, I have to go to the hospital, I swell up, I get hives. And my reaction to alcohol was quite the opposite, right? So I needed to understand this word allergy, and that it meant simply an abnormal reaction to a normal substance, right? Alcohol is a pretty normal substance. Most of the planet can use it without this abnormal reaction, and I'll talk about what that looks like as well. My abnormal reaction to penicillin is the opposite. My body says no. With alcohol it says yes, but for me, they're both an allergy. And what this allergy looks like for me is that most of the time, once I start drinking, I can't control how much I take. And that's the alcoholism is or isn't. That's the black or white. And I'm not here to convince you of anything, but maybe you can ponder, do I have that? And I have to put in there, I think I said it, I think I always say it, most of the time. Most of the time. And that's an important piece, because I remember spending like 4 years chasing that one time where I went out and seemed to have control. That one time where I went to the bar, I got a nice buzz, everything went my way, and I went home that night and made it to work the next day. And I'll spend forever trying to get back to that one time. But the truth is, you know, I used to say, if I go out, I know what will happen. But the really scary thing is, if I go out, I have no idea what will happen. Right? I've certainly gone way beyond my morals and values in the past. And I don't think I've done the worst that I'm capable of. You get me sick enough, and that monster, that hole has to get filled. So in addition, I have this mental and spiritual illness. And I think most of the planet has some levels of mental and spiritual illness. And you can turn on the news or go drive on your local highway and see that, right? Or go to a business meeting. I'm just kidding. Some business meetings are very healthy. The thing with my mental illness is that it comes to life in one way, and what's under it is this spiritual thing. And while I think the rest of the planet's spiritual malady, spiritual illness, seems to be like the acoustic version, mine is electric. And it's plugged into 15-inch speakers, right? This spiritual illness, this discomfort, this unable to sit still, this fear. And it's a funny word, fear. I got here and I have been to some really bad places. I mean, I've been to some bad places. I'm from California, by the way, if I have an accent or whatever. And when you said that I was full of fear, I had a guy who this time when I was done drinking, I ran to him, and he was the guy in AA who I hated. But I realized that last night that I drank, I realized that he had been telling me the truth the whole time. He wasn't patting me on the back and telling me I was going to be okay. He was telling me that I thought I was full of crap. He told me that I was probably, if I had the thing that he had, in a lot more trouble than I realized. And he was telling me the truth, and I saw it that day. But he said that every decision I ever made in my entire life was probably driven by fear, and that I never made clear, healthy choices for myself ever. And I wanted to punch him. Because when I got here, I thought fear equals physical harm, right? And what I learned very early age, right? I was the only guy my skin color in my town. And I learned very early on that just getting beat up hurt less than looking like a wimp, right? Than looking weak. That I might as well just take the whooping, and at least I can earn some respect, right? But it turns out that that's a fear-based choice, right? And that every choice I ever made in my whole life was based on this kind of fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of what you think of me, right? I live my life like I don't care what you think of me. But every choice I make is based on what you think of me. Fear of being a failure. Fear of the unknown. Fear of not being in control. Right? What if I died today? Would anybody care? Right? Was I a good dad? Would anybody come to my funeral? Right? It turns out my whole life was driven by that kind of fear. And I kind of like to look at alcoholism as this parasitic energy that enters my brain. The big book talks about it as self is what has defeated us, right? And I often tied those together, self and us, again, plural version of I, self and I. But that was always my problem. I always viewed self and I as the same thing. But what happens is at some point, this thing called self, this ego, this view of myself, invades my brain and it gets on top of I. Right? The real true me, the real flawed me. And I start to identify as that thing. It tells me I'm not good enough, I'll never amount to anything. Right? The noise in my head. And I try to fix that thing with that thing. Right? And I believe everything that that thing tells me. Right? And it turns out what I need to do is get that thing off me. And here's an example. I use my daughter a lot because she's so much like her mom. And I'm married coming up on 18 years. And last year was the year I realized my wife is more spiritual than me and my sponsor combined. I used to bark at my wife that she needs to write a 4-step. She's not one of us. Guess what? My wife in her whole life never needed to write a 4-step. Do you know why? She never accumulated one. My wife her whole life has looked at herself every night. My wife her whole life has got up in the morning and said, how can I be a better me? How can I be of service to God's children? What can I do for you? But because she doesn't, this is again that what I know, right? She doesn't do the mechanics of it, right? The how I think you're supposed to write a 4-column inventory or whatever columns you write. I don't remember why I went to that point, but back to the fear. Oh, I remember my daughter. My daughter's so much like my wife. And I often say, my daughter's 12, and when I grow up, I want to be like her. I remember my daughter was 18 months. I lived in New York, and it was one of those days where New York had rained for a couple weeks. Here I go with the detailed story. So the city was drenched, and it was only raining a little bit at the time. But I'm running late, and it's wet, and I'm annoyed. And I'm taking my daughter to go play at one of these play places. And I'm, Emily, come on. Emily, hurry up. I'm barking at her, and all of a sudden I snap at her. Let's go. And I turn around and I look at my daughter, and she's jumping on the puddle, cracking up. And I thought to myself, when did I complicate this? Because she's got it right. Emily, hurry up so we can go have fun. Right? She's just fine. And that's my experience, right? When I was a baby, at some point, I probably dumped something on me and thought it was the funniest thing ever. If I spilled something on myself today, I'm completely ashamed. I'm mortified, right? What happened? Where did I get that wrong? And I don't know. I have good parents. They did their best. My mom was 17 with 2 kids and didn't have a whole lot of coping mechanisms to pass, but she doesn't have the thing I have. So anyways, this spiritual illness, this dis-ease, this uncomfortability of always wanting to be someone else, somewhere else, at a different time with someone else, right? This uncomfortability of being at my own party. I remember being at my 21st birthday party, and to come to my party, you had to bring me a bottle of liquor, right? And so it's all my friends and all the liquors for me, and I feel completely alone. Completely alone, right? How did this all happen? I don't know. But what I will tell you is that ran my life. And what that caused me to do was make this insane choice, right? And this is the mental component of alcoholism that, again, I think we all have, and we just seem to have it louder than the rest of the planet, I guess. And again, what's under it is that spiritual uncomfortability. But, you know, I look at step 2 there, and I was really annoyed that you were implying that I'm insane. If you're saying that I need to be restored to sanity, you're saying I'm not sane. And I'm pretty decent with words. I didn't do really well in school, but vocabulary was my jam, right? It was my subject. And so I could give you a pretty good definition of the word insanity, but I couldn't see how that applied to me. And so the idea that I'd like to propose to you, specifically if you're new, and you know, half you, 3/4 you, maybe all of you will already know where I'm going with this, but the idea that I propose to you is think about the most insane thing you've ever done. And what my sponsor said to me I forgot I have a 9 o'clock alarm there. I'm sorry. Could you? Thank you. The ringer's off, but just swipe it left. My apologies. The idea that I propose to you is whatever that most insane thing you've ever done is probably not it. That's probably not the most insane thing you've ever done. And the idea that I propose to you is that maybe the most insane thing you've ever done was with absolutely no alcohol in your system, with the most amount of time you ever had. So, right, your sober mind was able to somehow convince you that this time it'll be different, that this time I'll manage and control it, right? So my insanity comes with no alcohol in my system. All the stuff I do once I'm drinking is really just science. When you put a mass amount of alcohol into a human body that doesn't eat and sleep right, that human body is going to do things that look insane, but it's really just science. That's what a mass amount of alcohol does to any human body, particularly when they're not nourished or rested, right? So the insanity of my alcoholism comes with no alcohol in my system. My mind lies to me in my own voice, and it's incredibly, incredibly convincing, right? So that's my alcoholism. I can't control. That's my chronic alcoholism, and I don't want to get too much, maybe we'll get to it later, but the book does refer to scales and levels and types and categories, but for simplicity purposes, I'm the worst alcoholic I've ever seen. And here I stand, right, with a solution in my life. Somewhere in this finding out that I had this thing, let me just say this. My first sponsor, I didn't pick, he was given to me. I went to that guy who I talked about earlier that night when I saw that he had been telling me the truth the whole time, and I just was in full surrender this time. No more, I'll do whatever you want, but, right? No more, I'll do whatever you want, yeah, except that, right? No more, I'll do whatever you want except call you every day, right? I went to this guy and I said, man, you got to help me. I'll do anything, I swear to God. And he said, Mike, I got a lot of guys right now. I'm not going to be able to give you the time you need and the time you deserve. And he walked me over to this other guy, which was probably the last guy in the room I would have picked. And he informed us both that this would be my sponsor. And the guy asked me a few questions. One was, am I willing to go to any lengths? And I knew what he was going to ask. Before he was even done with it, I already couldn't follow instructions or keep my mouth shut. I said, yes, I'll do anything, man, I swear to God. And then he said, when you have this spiritual awakening, will you carry that message to other alcoholics? And I laughed. I said, sure. If anybody ever wants anything I have to say regarding recovery from alcoholism, sure. And that is an important piece because I didn't believe these steps were going to work for me. I did not believe these steps were going to work for me when I started these steps. That's really important. I often use this analogy that if I made a cake and you wanted to make a cake and I gave you a box that had all of the ingredients for that cake and clear-cut instructions, if you used those ingredients and followed those instructions, would it be a cake? The answer is yes. Then I would ask you, do you have to believe it's going to be a cake while you use those ingredients and follow those instructions? Do you need to believe it's going to be a cake for it to become a cake? And that was my experience with these steps. I just did. I unaccepted dying. Not that I ever wanted to die, but I had accepted that I was going to die. But somewhere in this process with this sponsor who laid out what I talked about a little while ago, this what is alcoholism? I don't know. It's like he had the hook in me. He knew that I knew I had this thing. And he started telling me, you might need to start begging God to be real. Because if the only thing you've got to fight alcoholism is your mind, what does your history tell you? Right? What does my history tell me? And this is one of the ways that I kind of accepted dying. That losing the fight every time over and over to alcohol was so demoralizing, so dehumanizing, right? I get my wife or whoever a little bit excited, and then I just go on a worse spree than ever before, right? But I wanted to be able to tell my wife and my mom that I tried everything. So I decided I'd try this and I'd go all in. And at some point I started getting on my knees and just hoping there was something up there hearing me. Like visualizing maybe there's a net hearing me. Maybe there's something catching these prayers. But I'm desperate. And this guy who was sponsoring me, he had, again, last guy in the room I would have picked. He had sold everything and spent all his money on alcohol and other stuff and bought some wood, nailed his door to his apartment shut from the inside, and was determined to just go out lit up. And I thought that was incredibly brilliant. I thought that was really, really intelligent. Because I knew I was going to die this way, and I certainly don't want to die sick in the morning, right? I might as well go out flying high. And I knew this guy had the thing that I had, you know? Really briefly, this step 2 is something I really like to talk about, because I found myself for a lot of years in Alcoholics Anonymous. Even though I had an experience with it, the way I shared about it in meetings, I completely was missing the point of it. And for me, the point of step 2 has absolutely nothing to do with what I believe God to be, except that maybe whatever I believe God to be isn't currently working, so maybe I just need to let it all go, right? The point of step 2 for me today is simply just being able to move that far away from absolutely not, no way, never. And I don't even know if you saw my hand move, but it did. And all I had to do was just move a hair away from absolutely not. I'll never believe there's anything out there. And when I say God, I'm saying power, energy, love, whatever you want to call it. I actually had a sponsee who got a degree in theology to be able to argue with theologists. And he came and had this mathematical equation on why a doorknob could be your higher power. And my suggestion to him was that his higher power might need to be something that he couldn't break with a hammer or screwdriver. Right? Maybe a chair is not such a good idea. If I can destroy my higher power, maybe I need something bigger. But do you, right? Like at the end of the day, if it's working, who am I to tell you? I used to bark at these guys with 30 years sober who, according to me and all my wisdom and my judgment, had never done this, right? And bark at them that they can't do that. You can't sit around here for 35 years and not do the big book, right? What do I know? What I do know is that if I think I can, I have to try that. Right? I have to try that. These guys are doing the most natural thing in the world. We see it all over the big book. Bill and Bob show up to help these guys. They lay out the first step. They lay out a program of action, and these guys say, "Thank you very much. No thanks." What an incredibly normal human thing to do. Because that's what I did with all my other problems. Once I got the information, and you even told me how to fix it, I'm going to do it myself. That's how I did everything. How incredibly normal and natural. And if that works for you, awesome. My problem is I'm a guy who came in here and I heard things like, and I'm a word guy, no matter what, just don't drink. And if that keeps you sober, that's awesome. But my experience was no matter what, I just drink, and I thought I was more broken than you. Right? Why bother? I can't do that part, right? But again, if it works for you, do you. I got on my knees and I turned my will and my life over to something I had no clue what I was turning my will and life over to. And I literally felt, this is not an exaggeration, like I felt like I was being asked to jump out of a parachute and hope that my sponsor packed the suit right, the parachute right? And it was that hard for me because I had spent so many hours for so many years screaming at and spitting on and threatening anybody who tried to talk to me about God, right? To let that go, right? I had built a fort around this flag I had planted. And if you slung any arrows of truth at me, I acted like they weren't there. And I fought the harder, right? So to get on my knees, and I was simply asked to try my best to mean it. That's all I was asked, was to try my best to mean all the words in that prayer. To get on my knees and humbly try to mean all the words in that prayer on page 63. And that's what I did. Something happened. I don't want to set you up for an expectation, but something happened for me. I had really a deep second step experience. I thought, maybe there actually is something, right? And all of a sudden I kind of got hope. Again, I didn't believe this was going to work for me really until I got done with step 5. But I thought, maybe I'm not just doing nothing now. And I got busy writing, and I'd love to sit and talk about that. I really want to get to what steps 10 and 11 look like for me today, and can't believe I've killed so much time in this part of it. I got honest. And I got honest in a way that I was never able to get honest with myself, right? It never occurred to me that the first three columns of resentment that I spent my whole life in, right? Who, what, and how it affects me. It never occurred to me that all 3 of those columns are a lie. Sorry if you're in the first 3 columns of your 4th step. You're writing a lie. It's all a lie. And I find the truth in column 4. Anything that was ever done to me, I did to other people more than it could possibly be done to me. That thing that you talked about that I did, I actually did that thing. I created the whole situation. How dare you tell my girlfriend I cheated on her, right? Had I not cheated on her, there was no thing to tell, right? It turns out I placed unreasonable expectations on everybody. I have a contract with all of you and everybody on the road and everybody. I don't bother telling you about it, asking your permission, and I hold you to it, right? I keep score. It's funny, it's just about 3 years ago I let go of the texting and phone call scorecard, where you have to respond to my text or phone call, because I won't have any friends if you all have to live up to that expectation that I have. And my friends, I don't talk to you for 6 months and you don't return my call, it's cool. Like, why do I make it anything else? But that's how I live my whole life. Expectations. I go out and create garbage and then you do it to me and I say, how dare you? And I carry this anger for years and years and years. And when somebody actually does something to me and I didn't provoke it, I just continue to drink poison over it. I never talk to anybody about it. I never begin to heal. I just try to figure everything out myself. And in addition to my resentments, I start to look at fear and how it, as I shared earlier, just drove everything in my life. Everything. And I made a list of all the people I had hurt and all the relationships I had been in. At 5 years sober, it was probably my only original idea ever. I found that I couldn't have healthy relationships with attractive women. And I talked to my sponsor about it and he gave me some stuff, but what I ended up doing was I ended up writing an inventory on every woman I ever found attractive who I had more than one conversation with. And what I found was that I never presented true, transparent self. Because I always had an angle. I always had a door I wanted to leave open. And I'm wondering why I don't have a healthy relationship with attractive women. And the reason is I don't present myself. Right? I present a different self to everyone. And this was 5 years sober. Right? I present the you that I think you might sleep with. Right? And wonder why I can't have healthy relationships. Now what happened in this inventory is I did get it to my sponsor and we took a deeper look at it, and there was more to it, right? A lot of objectification and just garbage. Still an un-okayness with self, because that's where all my problems come from. I'm not okay with me, and really I'm not okay with me because I'm not okay with God, right? And how I see it is by not being okay with you. But what's really going on when I'm not okay with you is it's because I'm not okay with me because I'm not okay with God. Again, we could have 100 meetings on this. In step 5, I got a deeper look at this. I got completely honest. In fact, my first 5th step was the very day I met my sponsor. He dropped me off at my house, and I don't know where this came from. I opened the door, and I threw at him the 4 things I was never going to tell a soul, and I ran without ever intending to see him again. And I was mortified. And then he called me in the morning and said, hey, bud, how you doing? You want to hit a meeting? Right? But I got honest. And I looked at every twist of character, every dark cranny, right, that the big book talks about. And I like to use well, it's not the exact wording, but I mean, they use those words, but I'm doing it in a different order. But it talks about illuminating. And the thing that I think maybe I don't talk enough about, or maybe we don't hear enough about, is the key component for illuminating all the darkness in me is leaving the light there. So I don't shine a light on all the darkness and all my garbage and everything that I've been through. I bring a light in and I take a good look and I leave the light there so that it can continue to be open for inspection. I got a very close friend of mine, and boy, I hope to get to this point at one stage, but he says, I don't care if my sponsor blabs my fifth step, I'm free. Wow, right? Not caring. And that really is a destination, a goal that sometimes I achieve and sometimes I go away from. And step 6 and 7, I just kind of want to touch on a really key component of this. There's this really beautiful line, my favorite line in the whole book. Let me backtrack. For my 4-step, I lied and told my sponsor I was almost done. I was at 4-step meetings sharing I'm almost done with my 4-step, and I hadn't even picked up the pen. I was convinced I was doing it in my head. And then when I pick up the pen, it'll all just be there. And let me just tell you, it's the most dangerous place probably for an alcoholic to be, on the 4-step. Just thinking about it, right? Now, right in front of me, always going through my head is all the stuff I've been running from. Right? And I don't have the relief that comes from alcohol, and I don't have the relief that comes from 5 through 9. Finally, my sponsor kidnapped me. He just kidnapped me. He said, I'll be at your house at 8 a.m. tomorrow. You ain't got no job. And we're going to sit all day. And we sat at the Queen's. I got sober in New York at the Queen's intergroup office, and he sat with me all day, and he said, I'll bring you home for dinner. He brought me lunch. He didn't take me to lunch because he knew if I left that place, I was going to lose my momentum. And he sat with me all day. And then he took me home and he said, tell your wife she's not going to see you tomorrow. I'll be here at 8 a.m. 3 days. And on day 3, we spent the better part of that day doing my 5th step. So the reason I share that is you couldn't have much more momentum, right, than doing your 4 and 5 just in 3 days, fully and heavy. And this thing happens when I get on my knees and I'm asking God to help me be willing to let go of all the stuff that I found is blocking me, right? All the stuff I found that's keeping me drunk. And this word lust came up, and this weird voice in the back of my head said, but I like that. And that was really scary for me. And so this really beautiful line comes up in step 6. And it says to me, here's the beauty of God. Here's the beauty of Alcoholics Anonymous. Here's the beauty of this way of life. And I prefer to call it a way of life rather than steps, because this is a system. These are not standalone things. This is a system, right? Understandings and an idea. 2 understandings, an idea. Action. 4 through 9. 10 and 11 is the same actions of 4 through 9 every day. And I don't look at step 12 as an action, I look at it as the result. If I'm doing 10 and 11 every day, the result of that is step 12. It's a result, it's not something I have to actually do. It comes out of me. The beauty and simplicity of this is it just says, we ask God to help us be willing. So if I'm not willing, I can just ask God to help me be willing. Right? And I'm a big fan of just really simple, try your best to mean it. When I talk to God, try my best to mean it. Try my best. Help me be willing. I'm going to tie 8 and 9 together. They are different, but I went out and I started knocking on doors. I went out and I got humble. Like really, really, truly humble. I went out and I had conversations and I didn't correct people where I thought they had the facts wrong. I went out and made humble apologies and tried to change the behavior, getting away from this, tried to change the behavior and try to make whole people without saying things like, but if you hadn't, right? Or look what you did, even when they were more wrong than me. There's also a key component there, that the servile and scraping, and I don't know that we talk enough about those words too, because they're actually really clear that this doesn't mean that people just get to walk on us and we're going to walk up to people with our heads hung low, staring at our feet, being ashamed. Healthy self-esteem is a really good sign of great recovery, I think. But I go out and I start seeing that what I stole from people wasn't money, right? What I stole from people was peace, security, tears, night's sleep, what I saw was that I was in relationships and I hurt these women and I affected them for years in relationships, far after that. The change that happens, I don't know where anybody's at in the steps, but I do want to share this while we're here. What happens in 4 through 7 can be incredibly powerful. And I find that sometimes people seem to lose steam. They mistake what happens in 4 through 7, which is just a really good cleaning out and a priming. That gets mistaken for the change. And my experience is the change that we talk about in this process doesn't happen till 9. Till I really get that level of humility that comes from going out and looking people in the eye, owning what I did, offering them the last word, right? Tell me what I missed. Tell me how I can make it right. And so much I'm sure I missed and left out and got wrong, but let me talk a little bit about what my life's like today, because that can be best described in 10 and 11, and then the result being 12. I used to be part of this debate of nightly inventory. Is that step 10 or step 11? And don't think God cares what number you put on what you're doing, right? I don't think God cares, but my problem is I wasn't doing 10 for a lot of years. I was doing a nightly inventory, right? Doing morning prayer and meditation. And I'm a stay-at-home dad for 12 years. And this crazy thing happens, right? I can spend 20 minutes of prayer and meditation in the morning, getting really close to God, right? And just be completely changed and fully at peace for like 30 seconds till I come out and the kids aren't ready in the way I think they should be, right? And I lose my cool. And what happens is I lose my cool and I get angry, and I had all these expectations on my wife, and now I'm running on an ego and a fear. And then I go to back my truck. I got a really big truck and I live on a county road. And I go to try to back that truck out on the county road in the morning, already running on resentment and fear and whatever else. And what happens is I add another resentment, maybe another fear. And then I go to take my kids, at one point it was 3 kids at 3 different schools. And if you've ever done drop-off, pick-up at schools, there's a whole lot of resentment to be picked up if you want it. So I go into these high-stress situations already running on all sorts of fear and ego. And I just keep going about my day, saving it all for the night. Right? And I had my last sponsor at 9.5 years sober. I come to find out I'd never been practicing step 10 like it's available to me. And I'm not saying you have to do this, I'm saying it's available. So what happens when I do my morning prayer and meditation and I come out and I get upset with my wife or whoever, I can stop and I can process and look at what's going on with me. So that when I go to back down my driveway, I'm free and clear again. I'm not running already on resentment. And I'm less likely to pick up a new one. And then when I get to the school, I'm not running on 5 resentments, 4 types of fear, and all kinds of harm I've done. And et cetera, et cetera. And I'm getting to the home group at night wondering why I hate half the room and convinced I don't have any resentment. Right, so what happened was I got this sponsor and I thought it was really corny and lame that he was going to make me do this on an app. But he had me doing 10 steps and he said, pull your car over when you're agitated. Pull your car over. And if you're always in a hurry, then let's look at that too. Why are you always in a hurry? Right? To stop and process why I'm agitated takes about 8 seconds. Right? It takes about 8 seconds. Why am I agitated? What's going on with me? Because if everybody has to start driving right and behaving right for me to be okay, I'm in serious trouble. Again, get on the local highway. If they all have to start driving okay for you to be okay on the road, you're in trouble. Right? What's wrong with my reaction? What's wrong with my perception? Why am I thinking people are out to get me again? And so he had me do this because it was time stamped. And he had me call him every night with my 10th steps, not my 11th step, with all the times during the day I had stopped to process what was going on with me. And again, they were time stamped so I couldn't be dishonest. Like I sent them through this app and it's like, all right, you had one at 9:35, you had one at 9:40, et cetera, et cetera. And then what happened is it completely changed and freed up a whole lot of time in my 11th step at night. My nightly review was simply, is anything lingering? Did I miss anything? Right? More along those lines, and I was able to spend more time in meditation and in addition, self-reflection. And then I wake up and I do the other part of that 11th step. I invite God in. I ask him to divorce me from self. And I'm just kind of trying to be efficient with that. But the word I like to get to in that is the word divorce. The book uses the word divorce. And I don't know if you've ever been through a divorce or been close to someone who's divorced. It's quite often just a rip, right? And I need to be divorced from these things. And to take that idea a little further, they're suggesting that I've been married to them, right? And what I believe about marriage is two becomes one. I've been one with selfishness, self-centeredness, dishonesty, and fear. It's been a part of me. God, remove all of that. And there are two really key components of my morning prayer and meditation. I preview my day and I look at everything I've got coming up today and I ask two things. God, equip me. Never make it go easy. Never make it go my way. Equip me. Give me what I need to deal with this. And the other, and this is the meaning of life. I found the meaning of life in this way of life. I'm going to share it with you guys. I know it's an age-old question. Maybe you have a different experience with it. It's super anticlimactic. It is not as exciting as I'm building it up to be, but it is this. Is there anything I can do to make your day a little better? And when I can bring that attitude into my every interaction with every person, my life is amazing. It is unbelievable, right? God, don't let me miss an opportunity to be of service to someone because all I'm thinking about is myself. I fall short of all of this, but it's what I shoot for. Got about 3 minutes left, and I'd like to tell you about the results of when I'm practicing steps 10 and 11 on a daily basis as I laid it out. The result of that is that I'm spiritually awake. I'm almost on the outside looking in on my life. I'm able to see I'm agitated. You're not out to get me. My wife is not a bee, right? I'm able to clearly see, dude, what's up with me, right? I have this thing where this visual I like to give is this mangy dog. I leave my front door open and this mangy, dirty, filthy, scraggly street dog comes in and drops garbage on my floor. And what do? I pick the garbage up and inspect it. And I turn it over and inspect it some more, right? And I keep leaving the door open and I keep inspecting the garbage. And what steps 10 and 11 allow me to do is kick the darn door closed and stop picking up the garbage. Stop inspecting garbage because I created, I let it happen. Nothing matters. Everything matters. Nothing coming in, nothing coming at me, nothing you say, nothing you do matters. None of it. When it's my business, it's still probably not my business. Everything I do matters. Everything. I can spend years building relationships. I can spend years trying to change the behavior and show you that I behave differently, and I can tear it all down in a second, and I don't need alcohol to do it. I'm like a viper, right? But when I'm living 10 and 11 on a daily basis, I've had this spiritual awakening. And I'm practicing these principles to the best of my ability in all my affairs. Well, carry this message to alcoholics. I'm not going to short sell that. I also hear a lot around AA, you can't keep it if you don't give it away. And while I think that's true, forgive me if this is not you, but if you're not giving it away, you may not have it. If you are not lit up for carrying this message, if you haven't experienced what's available in here like I have, and you're not going nuts to watch the lights come on and somebody who came in here dying, maybe you haven't got it. Maybe you haven't experienced what's available. Again, whatever you're doing, if it's working for you, that's awesome and it's working. But does it sound like what's available in here? And then I want to address this, practice these principles in all our affairs. When a sponsee calls me, usually the first question I ask is, what's the lie your brain's telling you? Right? And then, in addition to that, for me, in my life, consider this. The answer to all questions, every question ever, is love. And if that's not the answer, it's because I'm asking the wrong question. Love is a space that I create around me. It's not a feeling. Love is a space that I create around me that accepts you however you show up, whenever you show up. Love is not my wife comes in and wants to give me a back rub and make me dinner. Love is my wife comes home and she's angry and grumpy and mad at me for no reason, and I treat her the same. Right? That's love. Love is, I already know what you're going to share. God, please help me to set aside everything I think I know about what this person's about to share. God, please don't let me miss an opportunity to learn something because I know. I'm just going to wrap up. I went a couple minutes over. I want to say, finally, I don't know. I don't know. And I hope that was a decent presentation of how you can experience Alcoholics Anonymous, because it is how I have. And as I said, I fall short, but man, when I'm doing it and when God's working in my life, whew, thank you guys.
Okay, incredible stuff. Greetings, everyone. My name is Brian. I'm an alcoholic. Just want to thank Mike on behalf of our group tonight for coming out here and sharing just an incredible message of hope and recovery. We're right up against it, so I'll make it quick. Food and fellowship for this group, right, starts 8 o'clock. Feel free to show up early if you want to hang out with us, help out with some service work. There's a lot of moving parts to the meeting, so there's always a meeting after the meeting. So if you're out there, if you're new, if you're struggling with something, or if you've been coming around for a while and it's just not really working, hang out with us, grab somebody after the meeting. It's customary for us to thank our speakers. They come here on their own time and expense. So usually we form a line in the front here and we thank our speakers. And if you do care to join us, we have a nice way of closing.